today I have the pleasure to welcome my friend Tony Rodrigues. Tony, how are you?
Hi, I'm very good.
Tony, I read your book that you just wrote, Ceres Colony Cavalier. Oh my God, I couldn't put it down. I turned the last page. It was 4 a.m., 4 in the morning. I couldn't put it down. It's emotional because you tell things that you are not often asked on interview. It's about your childhood when you were taken into slave trafficking, sex slave trafficking. But you tell also about all the deconditioning and the torture Montauk style experience that you've had. And I mean, it's not for fainted heart, this book, it's real stuff. It's disclosure. Oh my God, this book is a bomb. It's disclosure about so many things. It's not only about the Dark Fleet series. Oh, yeah, we know your story, and there's so many more details in it that you've never told anyone on video. But it's also about the first part that, it's difficult, I suppose, to tell about it. Really, I understand that. I mean, I was in tears many times reading the first part as a woman with motherly instinct. Although I never had children, that's getting emotional. This kid, which is you, I think all women who read this book felt the same. You just want to hug this kid so much and cuddle him and tell him, don't worry. It's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. You're going to get out of this, and it's not forever. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. This is, human being is capable of the greatest spiritual, beautiful, artistic achievements, as well as the darkest, most wicked actions. Anyway, I could speak about everything that I have. I'm just cuddling your book because I can't cuddle this kid that is inside. That's so funny. Every time I say that to myself, I do that. It's so powerful, and the way you write, I like it because it's very cut in short paragraphs, so you can take your breath. You read a bit and because you need to. And you go into it, or you can go and make a coffee and get back into it because, wow, the details, everything. So, okay, enough about my my feelings. I suppose it was difficult to write about this first part of your life experience. I suppose you felt it like a relief. How?
Now I do.
Yeah.
Now I feel that there's a very real like release of everything that happened. Like I carried around the baggage. Like I look back on my life and I go, I was carrying that baggage of what happened to me. The damage of it. Yeah. And the beginning, right, like you said, the first part's when I was younger. So the book goes from basically I was taken at 10 years old all the way to 30 years old. And in those first 6 or 7 years as a young child, I was not in the care of people that cared about me. I was in the care of very, very damaged people. And it took me years to even write it. Like I found it was in 2015, Dr. Sala had suggested, you need to write a book. This is the best thing. He's like, this is the best thing you should do with this information is write a book so that it, just reaches a bigger audience and has a tangible thing to it. And I very quickly realized that I was incapable of writing these because I was started in the beginning. Like And I thought, I even tried different things. I said, I'll do the end of it first. Maybe that'll be, and I did. I wrote a few chapters, but that didn't work out. It just didn't make sense because you have to make a timeline of it. And you're talking about recovering deleted memories too. So I remembered much as I read the book, mostly personal things, like came back to me, like, because you live the emotions of it. And I'm getting that a lot. A lot of people, women and men, are telling me that they breaking down and having, a guy just wrote me recently and said, I was screaming at the book. I screamed out loud in anger at your book. Like reading it. And that's why it's important. I think that's the whole thing. That's the point, is that throughout the book, I don't know if I mentioned it specifically, and there's a lot of things in there that I've mentioned in interviews that didn't make the book because I just didn't think they were relevant. And I needed, at the end, there was a real decision, like, am I ever going to get this thing done? I've been 6 years of genuine effort, 6 years. And I thought, I need to get this done. And I kind of barnstormed it. And I just said, there were many things, because I was going through and trying to keep everything from all the interviews in it. And it wasn't realistic. So I just got down what was important, what I wanted to get in there, and got it done. But there's just a real sigh of relief that it's over and that it's been welcomed the way it has. And everybody does kind of tear it up. Like we made it a bigger font, and then I write like that in my messages and in my emails. I put spaces in between everything because that's how I process. And everybody I get a lot of good feedback that it's easy. It's a fast read, it's fast. But it was a slow to write. It was very slow because I did relive those things. And so what I wanted to say was that many times during that time, mostly from grays, from probably Zeta grays, or the white, the taller whites. What do you call them?
White.
The Tokert.
Keely Tokert, probably.
Keely Tokert, yeah. So probably those guys. What they told me all along, because I'm sitting on the operating table and in pain, writhing in pain, opened up with no painkiller, and they would just say, "You're not going to remember this anyway, so we're not going to bother." So how is this legal? When I would ask, how is this legal that you can treat somebody like this? They would say, because you're not going to remember it. That was their answer. That is literally their justification. Do you get what I'm saying? Like when you say that these are demented people that are sick that can treat people like this, their justification is that, well, they're not going to remember it. It's kind of like putting somebody under an anesthetic, only it's for 20 years long. And they say, well, you're not going to remember it, so we can just kind of treat you however we want. So for me, I think that was my whole entire calling. And it's like, literally, I think it was my whole entire calling was to prove them wrong. Like during that time, I could remember that, saying, I am going to remember this, you SOB. And I think that is one of the biggest triumphs that I could, claim, is that because now here's proof. They justify their entire system of treating people like that. But now I'm living proof, and so is this book, that you do remember this, that people do remember, and they need to there is no justification for how they treat people.
No, so there isn't.
That's really the point. That's really the point of it all.
You speak about remembering, and it was not only luck, because I think it was a bit destiny when they couldn't find your file. And don't spoil anything of the story, but it's also because you were in love with the girl, and try not to spoil it either, but you wanted to remember her, and this emotional connection with her, and you even swear to her, I will remember you, I will promise, and because you wanted to remember her, because you loved her. And that wasn't normal storage place in the head for normal memory. It was somewhere else where you store your feelings. And that's another place in the mind. And that's why you remembered her, and you probably stored all the rest with it. Do you think it's
yes?
Right?
And, so right now in a lot of the community, everybody's concerned about manifesting, right? So everybody's learning ways to manifest this. You manifest, you know what I'm saying? You set your intention and you would dwell on it. You do manifesting. And there's a very natural laws around that. Like you literally do manifest things. And it's, in the end, on the flight, especially the flight from Ceres to the moon, I went through that. I manifested that. You know, like it was, I knew that I had the anxiety of going through the process of being deleted, having my memories deleted. I knew that's where I was headed. And I said over and over, I'm going to remember, I'm going to remember, I'm going to remember. And it was motivated because I was in love. And from the living conditions of the middle of the book, from the early years of the book, that into especially my first service on the ship, where I was really just suicidal. It was just a horrible existence for a long time, for like 8 years. To go from that to the point where I had freedom, a shred of freedom, to where I could move about the colony and to have some people that actually loved me. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
to go to that scale was a great success to me, and I didn't want to let it go. I didn't want to let go of that because I didn't know what I was going back to. For all I know, I was going back to the same loneliness that I came from,
yes.
that I'd lived for a long time. So that was motivating. I want to say this, that a few other people, and I can't say that it's just. It would be bad etiquette to name their names, but there have been other people that I've spoke to, men and women, and some of them are very well known in the community. Some, that are very famous in the community that I've talked to has said the same thing. I had somebody that I cared about at the very end, and I didn't want to lose her. I didn't want to lose him. And they got their memories back. And these are people that are speaking now. It came and went, like there are people that have come out and spoke, and then it's not for them, and I don't want to speak about it anymore. But I try to talk privately with people that speak about this. Of course, like you, like we stay in touch. You know what I'm saying? Like I stay in touch with you because you're an experiencer, so you understand how, you know what I'm saying? You and I see the world in a way that most people don't, because we have we know what's going on up there. We have a clue. And so we see the world differently. So I like to stay in touch with people like that. And many people that I've spoken to, I say, well, how much do you remember? Like I always try to ask people, like, what do you remember? How much do you remember? And you put a percentage on it, and even people with a little bit, 20%, 30%, they say, I don't know, maybe 25, 30%, not a lot. There's love. There's a connection that they didn't want to forget. So that is something that's kind of more, like you said, somewhere different. It's in your heart, not in your head, kind of thing, when you're motivated like that. So yeah, that's the real deal. And I was happy because nobody asks you that in an interview. Most interviews are like, tell us about Mars. Tell us what's going on. Tell us what are the ETs like. What's going on up there? Who's in charge? That, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you build the motor to do it? Get us into space. That's what interviews are, and nobody wants to ask you, like, who took care of you? Did you have anybody that, you know what I'm saying? Like, who helped you? Who was your best friend? Nobody cares. Nobody gives a crap.
I've been very touched by the experience in the time you spent in Peru, and Manuel's mother's Parches, which is patches. Yeah, it's Parches.
Oh my God, I so wanted to ask you when I was reading that. Did you try to find her? But it was a long time ago, so maybe not sure she's still alive.
I'm pretty sure she's passed by now. She was older, and then they were, that was, she was older, so she would be very old now. From that, so you're talking 40 years on top of, she was already like 50 years old. So I'm pretty sure she's passed on, but she was a very colorful soul. You know what I mean? Like you meet people like that are very, the word is colorful. I can't say it any other way. And like her clothes, she purposely patched her jeans. All her clothes had patches because that was her service she did for people down there. So this was a river, and it's funny because I've never been there. I don't really know a lot about this culture. So this is a kind of a validating story. This can be validated. This is something that can be validated because I've never been there, in my life, and I don't know anybody from there. And it's a very remote town that doesn't have a lot of influence from the outside world, other than the illegal gold mining industry and the drug industry, the drug smuggling. And I understand that there is still human trafficking going on down there, but that was her service, is that they didn't get clothes a lot. They were poor. So when they got a rip in their clothes, it's very common to just patch and keep wear the same jeans until they, patch your jeans out. And that's what she did for a living. That was her side gig outside of whatever she did. So she told me, she had him tell me, because she spoke Spanish and Manuel would translate, that was her advertisement. Those were her commercials. I said, you know what I mean? Like, why do you have so many patches on you? And she said, these are my commercials, basically.
But at the same time, you can't try to reconnect with them because Manuel was, involved in, trafficking and stuff. You wouldn't want to reconnect with him, not to put him in trouble.
I've really tried to put the effort on the drawing board. I got in the planning stages of going there, and I tried to find people, the friends of mine that are from Peru, and everybody says the same thing. Don't go there. You're a gringo, you're going to go there. There's a lot of criminal activity. You have a good chance of being killed.
Yeah,
and that's why I haven't gone there, because that would imagine going there with a film crew and validating my story, like finding you know what I'm saying? Like going back, there are people there. I'm pretty sure that there are people there that would remember me, and that would validate that would be the whole house of cards, so, but, there have been other things. There's enough evidence behind the book. There's enough evidence behind, which is why I listed it. It's in the autobiography area. Yes. It's not in science fiction or in some kind of space.
Oh, no.
It's listed as a true account because there's enough evidence to support it.
Talking about evidences, you tell the story how you were taken into the whole adventure when you were a kid at school. A new kid in town comes, his father is an Illuminati, and the kid is weird, even weird looking, is like out of this world. And you write, the kid, there was a school project, and talk about something that's not possible, or I don't remember exactly what the school project was. And the kid says, I'm the reincarnation of a pharaoh, and I am famous for, did he mention he was on his horse?
So it was an essay, and we wrote an essay about it yourself. You were supposed to write, it was an advanced learning class, talented and gifted class. We met every Wednesday in the library for a couple hours. And we had to write an essay about ourselves. And this kid was like, he was much smarter than us. And there were times when he actually corrected the teacher about things. But his essay was about being a pharaoh, a reincarnated Egyptian pharaoh. And as he read it, he said, I am the reincarnation of an Egyptian pharaoh. And the teacher said, no, she corrected him, said, no, you have to say, I believe I am. And he got upset. He got visibly upset. He said, I believe. And he wrote it. He started reading it angrily. Hey, and he said, he went on about the account, and we were all like, what? We were all sitting, like the other kids were looking at each other like, well, this is weird. Because most of our accounts were like, I live in a town with my mom and my dad, and I love my dog. You know what I'm saying? Like, these were most of the essays. And here's his about a battle. And he said that he saved lives by engaging an army, that he saved his army's life because they were likely to die or likely to have heavy losses, but he went out and fired an arrow. I don't remember exactly the details, but I think he might have been riding his horse, but I don't know. Honestly, I don't remember exactly. All I remember is that he said he shot an arrow and killed the other whatever leader, the other king or the leader of the army, whatever army it was. And I always remembered that story, and I researched him. So since then, I don't publicly say his name, but I have found him. He's alive and he's well, you know what I mean? He's got a family, and whatever, he's got his own life. So he's got his own karma to deal with, and however it works, I don't have any really hard feelings towards him, but I have found him, and I did research that. I always, and I'm not even like before I got my memories back, like 20 years ago, I would research that story. I kept looking for a pharaoh that got in a battle and killed another king and saved his army. Like, I kept looking for that, and I could never find it. And especially when I was writing the part of the book. So when we were editing, when Jackie Kenner, who's my co-host, you met, she's the editing. So Jackie is very educated, and she took whatever book publishing, like she has she had classes. So she was very good at the editing part. And during that part, I said, no, I want to put this in there. And we both researched it. She did. She took a couple of days, and we kept trying to find who this kid. And she said, do you want to put it in there? We don't have anything. I said, no, just put it in there. It's what I remember. It's what I remember. So that's what this is. Like there are a lot of things in there that I put in there that are kind of feelers, but I don't have what. And so you got back to me and found it, because just so happens a friend of mine is an Egyptologist, has an archaeological degree, and you got back to me and found it. So you had access to. Why is that information to get?
Because in archaeology and in many different science disciplines, there are scientific publications with all the details. Only the scientists know how to find them, where it is, and they just teach among themselves, the students. And then there is the mundane public publications where you have just romanticized stories, or just barely the facts. I remembered. It just jumped at me. I remember I had learned during my Egyptology courses that there was a king of the New Kingdom who was a great military, and he had expanded the boundaries of Egypt during his reign a lot, and that he was very proud to get everyone recorded in all the administrations, a military fact, that he went to attack Nubia, and take the territories of Nubia. And there's a Nubian lord and small king, with his army, but they were very fierce, very well trained, and very ferocious. They were there, and they wouldn't accept that. And this king came, and I remember that he was on his horse, and he fired an arrow at the king, and he shot him in the head, and that was over. So they took the territory of Nubia, and that's very famous in Egyptology. And I couldn't remember, and I went through my I still have some notebooks of my courses, and this king is Tutmosis I, father of Queen Hatshepsut. And the way you describe the character, the personality of this king, that could totally have been Tutmosis I, because he was so known to be so proud and a military chief who wanted everyone to know about his achievements. So I wrote to you straight away, I found it.
Well, that's funny, because he was still proud of it. If that was him reincarnated, you know what I mean? I'll throw a big if in it. If that was him reincarnated, he was still very proud of it. 4,000 years later, or 3,000 years later, however long, like he was still bragging about it. So,
and there's only one pharaoh who really recorded that. Only one. That's only one. So, wow.
It opens a lot of questions. Like I said, I want to start asking you questions, and it opens a lot of questions. I really do feel that a lot of the elite may possibly have some form of a way to recall their past lives where we don't. And I believe that it comes because when you look at how treasures disappear, like the grave robbers were really the same people that died. And once they grew up old enough, they get their stuff. Like the Dalai Lama is a reincarnating individual that has past life. They go and find him. He picks out his toys, and then he gets his throne back, his position back. And so you look at how wealth gets transferred and what's going on, like a lot of royalty. They may have a technology, a science that lets them have their past life recall, whereas we don't. And I've spoken about this before, and I'm saying it just as a theory. I don't really, other than seeing how things work in the world, and then opening your mind that there is a space program, that there is a great deal of consciousness transference and consciousness technology, that we are a soul in a body, and there's a great deal more going on than what and a purposeful hiding of information science around it. Like when there's the science around consciousness is purposely buried as well. So you can see the whole in the picture and know that something needs to be there as well. That's also proof. But I always theorized that, and I said that, you know what, these people, it would also explain, because it's a good thing to forget your life, to die and forget your whole life because of the trauma and everything. So if I really after a couple lives, I wouldn't want to keep remembering, these are people that came out of the barbaric Stone Ages. And if you had all your life's memories for the last 1,000 years, they have a certain level of barbarism that they still remember as well. So that would be bad. And we kind of, you know what I mean? Like it would lead to what we in modern times would think a psychopathic behavior. You know what I mean? Like there was a time when being murderous and drawing the line, like people killed all their own food and butchered their own animals and had to defend themselves against invaders. So that murder wasn't what it is to us today. And there's, and if you had all those memories with you, if you were an elite and were incarnating and keeping your memories, then that would explain a lot of their disconnect with our society and how our rulers are. So that's interesting. That's, it's not a ton of the book, but that's a neat fact. And I was blown away that you found that and confirmed that for me, because when you messaged me, I actually didn't even remember putting it in the book. But I remember when we put it in it, like when you messaged me, I went, wait, that's in the book? You said page 17. I had to go get one and read it. And I went, oh, wow. Like I was blown away by that. So small validations.
I know. I started reading it and okay, that's going to be an amazing adventure. And I was like, really need to take the reader by the hand and already page 17. Oh my God. Oh, close the book, go find. If it starts page 17, oh my God. So
a lot of people are getting through it quickly. I was a little, I don't want to say I was upset about it, but I was shocked actually that people were reading the book so fast, and because it took so long to write, it was so difficult to write. And then we thought originally in the first format, we thought it was only 200 pages. But when we reformatted it to fit in, these were 200 pages of word-sized document, 8 by 11. So when we put it in book size, it was 480, and is it 480 something? And it's probably 80 pages extra of, with by the time you got all my spacing and then the pictures and everything. So it's like a 400-page read, and people just absolutely demolish it. It's amazing.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't put it down, and it's written. So, I mean, like you're talking, and we hear you talking. We hear, those who know you hear your voice telling the story. It's quite, it's like, you can't just stop. You can't. And I'm very grateful that you wrote these short paragraphs, because you can take a break and, make a coffee and just get back into the adventure. Oh my God, Oh, anyway, so I get on my list of questions and notes. Okay, now, you are on Mars for a short period, and you are put in contact quite roughly with insectoid indigenous beings that you call bugs, and things I want to comment about that. First is, you say that there are different species, there are different shapes, different, and that's exactly what, when I wrote my book also, We Will Never Let You Down, I've been given a little bit of data and pictures about insectoids on Mars. And I've been told as well, there's so many species, different species of them, breeds, there's variety, diversity. They are very territorial. I've been told they're extremely, aggressively territorial. And so my perspective is totally different than yours. It's actually the opposite. I was told the same story from the perspective of the Galactic Federation. These people who were against the Dark Fleet, where you were taken into, and those. So it's funny because it matches. The Galactic Federation was arming the local Martians, reptilian species, and all the insectoids to fight against the corporates and the Gulf Fleet. So so I won't say that, and also the telepathic ability of these bugs. I met once a mantid, green mantid, and as a benevolent one, when she was very curious. When you approach into a perimeter of this being, I was like maybe 3 meters away from it. I could already feel her mind. It was feminine, her mind scanning me, but it was a presence, and the way I could describe it, it was like this being was interdimensional. It was present on different dimensions. That I don't know it, the presence of it and the mind that could go through you. So, what do you think of that?
The one that I met that's described in the book during that time was, so I was in a combat situation. Like I was literally a support soldier on a combat mission. And the day before, Bugs had been killed. So during that time when it came up to me, like 2 people got murdered right in front of me by them and eaten by Bugs. When it came up to me, it was the same thing. Like I could feel it. When it was far away, it's funny you said 3 meters. For Americans, it's about 10 feet out. And that's about when it's began. Like when it came close to me and it had like whatever antenna, and they were moving randomly. And then when it got close and then it got closer to me, I could feel it, and I started when I could feel it about 10 feet away, 3 meters away, I started begging it for my life. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Please, I don't want to die. And I was already badly wounded. And I was just begging for like a legitimate beg for your life. Like, people beg for their lives, maybe a little bit goofing around, but this was a legitimate circumstance. Yeah. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. And when it came close, the antennas went, and I totally I lost the pain, quit and everything. I was totally like out of my body. But it was a male. It felt like a male, and he had treated me in a much better respect. He was treating me, even though that situation, I'm the enemy combatants. His rapport with me was more, I'm searching for the word, more respectful than the humans that I had been living with for the past month. You know what I'm saying? Like I was a slave in that situation, and all the humans that I'd lived with really up to that time, he treated me with a respect. Like there was a community. I said, please don't. He said, calm down. I don't want to kill you. He said, we're going to see, I'm here and we're going to check you out and we're going to see. He's like, I'll be honest with you that if I'm told to kill you, I will, but I really don't want to. So just calm down and let's see what we got. Like, you have a chance. Like he was bluntly, professionally, like on it, and this was like a telepathic communication, but he was very respectful to me. And then it went to image, then not really words, but imagery. And it was, and I described that scene pretty good in the book of how it went. It went
it's
back.
Amazing.
And that's exactly what happened. And he showed me the house that I was my home in Michigan that I was taken from, that I, at the time, when we stood there in the living room and like I missed it. Okay. Like I missed it at that time. Do you get what I'm saying? Like when I got there, I didn't know where I was. And he said, this is who you are. He said, this is who you are. This is like, it went through the whole scene when I got back to, but at that time, and then it took me away. You know what I'm saying? Like we were there literally on a spring day in my living room in Michigan, and I could smell it. I could smell the place, and it was our living room. And he said, this is who you are. So you're not, he went on to say, you're not a warrior. You're not here for killing. You're not really a killer. You chose a path of love. He's like, that's really your alignment. And I forget exactly how he worded it or how I described it in the book, but then it went away. It went, and I remember that I didn't recognize it. It was foreign to me, but the feeling of it, of home, I missed it. Like and I thought about it for days afterwards, like weeks, years after that. I would always think back, like, where is that place? Like I had a real feeling of longing for it, but I didn't even know what it was at the time. The other thing is that in Peru, I think I put that in there, that I colored the same. They gave me crayons. And when I was a kid in Peru, and I always drew the same thing. I always drew a farmhouse with a long driveway, and it was they were always, why do you always draw this? Right? I said, it's got to have a long driveway, along to the road, a long path to the road. I would always draw it to the top of this, and that was that house. That was my house I grew up in. Like subconsciously, I did have memory of it, and I did miss it. So however that works, I don't know this, I get into it sometimes on my show and the science of it all, but that was the experience, like it's neat that you can confirm it. And then later, like I said, later on, we're going to get a point where people can confirm the things in my book on their own. Like hopefully we get a disclosure very soon. And, it's not if, it's when. And people are going to be able to read the book and go, 100 years from now, they're going to be able to go to Ceres and look around and see the places I described, hopefully.
Yes.
Yes. That's my hope.
Yes. This, I suppose it was a realization, emotional realization at that time with this insectoid being that it was supposed to be your enemy. It was your enemy. He was your enemy, but he had more compassion and respect for you as a living being than those supposed to look after you. That must have been really triggering, I suppose, really. Yeah.
That was the kind of the treatment that I always missed Peru. I always felt like I had a family atmosphere when I was in Peru. And to me, that was home. I always wanted to go back. I always thought that was my home that I wanted to go back to. And it was like that. Like I knew. So these were things that I knew that people lived a life that got with respect. Do you get what I mean? Like I was living a life, a certain life that I was told that that's how it is. And but I knew that there was a better lifestyle to aspire to. I always wondered what it was like if, you could see the people that were in charge of me, that they obviously got treated differently and had a different life. And then when other things would respect. So I knew that there was a level of that I could get, that I aspired to. There was a level of emotional treatment from other people and other things that I aspired to always get, and so I don't want to say that was motivating or not, but it was something that was always on. It was always on my mind, Like yes. I know there's better than what I'm living.
Love exists, love exists somewhere in this universe, and that's great. Now my next question. Oh yeah, did you hear about Martian local reptilian species?
So we were briefed on them in the very beginning, like the very first day I was there, we were briefed, and I think they showed us a picture.
Okay.
Like we had like a briefing, and they showed us a picture of them, and then that was it. They said, you're not going to come in contact with any of these, and that's that.
Yeah.
And that was all we got. So I didn't have any contact with any reptilians that whole time when I was on Mars.
Okay, yeah, because they were supposed to be also your enemies because they are locals, part of the locals. Okay, very interesting. Now, still on Mars, Aries, you are at Aries Prime, and you are following not a teaching. You are training with computers, and you have a supervisor, a trainer, who is a tall white being. I think it may have been a Keeley or Kurt. I don't know if who was very sarcastic with you and very cold and sarcastic. And honestly, it wasn't funny, but it made me laugh. And I was thinking, did Tony ever thought about messing around with him or just teasing him? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I did. Well, in the beginning, I thought, when the way he treated me in the very beginning, he was very stern with me. And I thought, man, this is going to be another traumatic thing. Like he's going to hurt me. And after a few days of that, where he was, I saw that he wasn't like that. It was basically I don't want to say a personality thing, but I kind of knew that he had his limits. Like his abuse of me had a limit. Yeah. And there were times that I tried to give it back to him, but he was way smarter than me. He was way quicker. Like, to get into kind of a back and forth of insults. He was just way better at it than me. I couldn't do it. I tried a few things, but he was just way better at being insulting than me. So after a while, I did it was humorous, and I get that now. Like I laugh sometimes when somebody in public, if you think of like when you're driving your car in public and somebody does something very bad to you, you know what I mean? Like I laugh at it. Sometimes I crack up because I'm like, wow, how can you even be that rude? That's incredibly rude. That's, but he was rude, but it was kind of like just his way, and who knows what culture he came from, how they review people, humans. So I think that's something else that a lot of people don't in the community, in the UFO community, that we're going to have to deal with after a disclosure. There are many species out there that just feel they're naturally better than us. And I equate it like people don't have any concern for the squirrel in the tree in their yard. They think they're better than it, but it's alive and it's a sovereign being. And you know what I'm saying? The tree is too. And they all have a certain right to life and certain things that you give them. And ETs see us in a certain aspect as well. And you know what I mean? We're very undeveloped in many ways. So maybe that's just what he was. And who knows, maybe he was super, maybe he did have like a 500 IQ. I don't know, but he was much better at being insulting than me, put it that way.
The Kilutokurt are very proud and patronizing, and they look at you from above, what I want to say. Oh yes, what's very interesting. Two things about this species. I've had the opportunity to interact with a couple of them, and I learned that they are traders. So they say they are traders. They work for their own. Their aim is to make profit, and they have different subspecies among them. So I met a couple. The male was like the one who was your trainer, tall, white, like a gray but white, and the female was. I'm going to show you a picture later, and you're going to go, wow. No, these people, they trade humans like
cattle.
For cattle. Mm-hmm. They sell kids to the reptilians to do, they eat them. The reptilians can eat the kids and kill them. They don't care. Killers don't care. It's cattle. But when you learn about their own culture, these people have a very advanced, highly organized culture. They love arts, music. They love their children, and the children, it's everything for them. They protect their children. They love them, and it's above everything. So when I knew that how a species who loves their children so much is able to trade another species' children to be eaten, and I went, oh my God! I saw the cows in the field behind my house, and I went. Oh,
we do the same thing. We exactly do the same thing.
Oh my God. That was like, poof,
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Second thing about this Kilutokurt subspecies, they say they are traders, and the female, I drew her, and that's how she looked like. So wow.
Yeah, the hands, exactly 3 fingers like that. I remember his hands.
Yeah, and in your book also, so does that, I think it may remind you of the Altruan as well, when I saw, because the Altruan also, they don't look like the tall white you were,
they had more of a human complexion.
That's it. And I wrote.
And so I put that in there. So that's a vague memory. I have a terrible time with names, and that was as closest I could put. So we had to write something in the book for the actual name of them, the Altruan. And I remember that it was something like that. Yeah, I had an artist do that for me. They all had long, straight hair. They had bigger eyes, and they were tall. They were about 7 feet tall, but they had different colored hair. Some of them would have red hair, some would have blonde, some would have black hair. They were all very different colored. Like they did that on purpose. And it was the males that were working in the hangar. They were technicians in the hangar. They worked on all the craft. Like they were the mechanics for the ships. But I could be off on the name Altruan. It's close to that. I know it's close to that.
They have different subspecies. So Altruans may be one of the subspecies, because first, reading your book, the way you describe them, you see no correlation between the way you describe the Altruans working on Ceres in the businesses and the way you describe this guy, the tall white on Mars, or it was on Mars.
Yeah, Mars.
But then they describe the Altrons describe themselves, same as the Keely Talker describe themselves. And if I hadn't seen this female Keely Talker, I wouldn't have made the relation between the subspecies, because she wasn't the same species as the male I saw, who was they were the ones who were in the trade of humans. And
he had hair.
Yeah.
He had hair.
Yes. That's it.
So I think that's right. And you know what's funny is so when I remember being in the club with Altruans there, and they would come in 7, 8 of them, 10 of them at a time. They would all come in. They stayed together and they'd take they had their own area that was like bigger couches that they would take, that we would, because they acted kind of arrogant.
Yeah, arrogant. That's what I was looking for.
Like, do you understand? Like, they stand and they take up a lot of space where they stand. Do you get what I mean? Like, they would take up an area, like, get out of my way kind of attitude. And we would always say, well, who are they? They ain't nothing. And maybe that's the term we use. Like I'm saying, but they're just a subspecies too. Like there was always something like that. Like they're nothing special. They act like they're in charge of everything, but they're really nothing either. You know what I mean? Like there's those guys that walked in. I remember that they were very kind of proud of themselves, but we were like, they're not running anything. They're here working the same as us. You know, they do the same. Humans have better jobs than they do. And, I remember that was the dynamic, but they got out and they were social and they were kept to themselves, and they were very, very like proud people. You know what I'm saying? Like not over the top, not over the top like the gray white, the guy who was like super condescending. He was condescending 100% of the time. These guys were they were just proud. It was just like, like a biker gang coming in to a bar, and they would just do their thing. They were the same kind of culture.
It's like the guy who held a certain business, Crumbs. You were told, don't speak to him directly. He hates that.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed to really interact with it because I was a slave. So I wasn't supposed to interact with any ETs. I had to go through somebody. But I had a damaged psyche. I had a damaged mind, so they didn't want to interact with me directly. I think that's why the rule. But
wow, people will discover all of these adventures with these ETs in your book. I promised us so many details. Now, my next question: you're still on Mars, or you're in the moon? You are sent. I think you're on the moon, back on the moon. Correct me, because you have so many adventures.
Well, there was a lot, I don't put it as adventures, but you're talking about decades of space travel. So there was a lot of stuff. We hit 5-6 stops a day,
Yes.
So there was a lot.
Yes.
I tried to keep it in order, in there. But anyhow, go ahead.
No, you signed on a mission to bring Mercury, Quicksilver, to a reptilian on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned this was because his ship was stranded. What was the Mercury for?
So he was in a building in Chicago. So there was a high rise in Chicago where the top floor was where he was living.
Yeah.
And it had it had a anti-grav unit on the ceiling disguised as a air conditioner. So on buildings, you looked at big air conditioners on top of the building. He had an anti-grav unit up there, and it was so he lived in lower gravity than us. So his room that he lived in, they had the gravity, and it leaked. It had a leak, and he was in 1G, and he was wearing a belt. So we were testing out actually belts for the climbing. We did an operational test of lower gravity belts. So there was a big harness that you wore, and when you turned it on, it had batteries. It would lower your gravity. You could climb easier. So it was a test for that. And go ahead.
No, I cut you. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say when I was at Gaia and being interviewed by Jay Widener off camera, he said, after we talked about it off camera, he said, because I told them, I said, I don't know why they made us climb. We didn't have to climb up there. They could have ported us right to the roof. In fact, they did have a team that did the repair that just went straight to the roof, but they made us come in at a lower level and climb up a great, like on a high rise on a building, like, you know, hundreds of feet in the air. And he said it was because if it ate you, it wanted adrenaline. It wanted you to be scared, so that if it was going to eat one of you, that's why it was slaves, number one. But you guys were a meal for it, and it decided not to eat you. I was there. I volunteered for the mission because I was suicidal, and I was programmed to not suicide. I was mind programmed to not be able to suicide. So I volunteered for the mission because I wanted to die. My life was that bad at the time. And when it came in front of me, I could only see its eye. It had a suit that gave off a gas. You could see the gas coming off of it, and the gas gave it an invisible effect. It was invisible when it came outside and met us. And it wanted the one of us that was the most scared. It was going to probably eat. And it decided not to. And it didn't make us. But when it came to me, I remembered I wasn't afraid. I was happy. I thought, this is it. Finally, I'm going to get out of here. Like, I thought to myself, finally, this miserable existence is going to come to an end. And it won't even be suicide. This thing is going to kill me. And I remember not being afraid, that there was actually a little bit of happiness about it. And so he passed by me. He knew that I wasn't afraid of him. He wanted fear. And there was none of us was. So he just went on his way. And then we went back to the moon.
Yes, you wanted to feed off your fears. And you said it, you weren't afraid to die. You wanted to die. And because you weren't afraid to die, you weren't in fear. You had no fear. And that, sometimes in life, these things. Yes, when you're not scared of death, you don't have any fears, But actually, to read it in your story, and it just hit me. I went, yes. When you know about death, when you know what's behind, when you know that's just going somewhere else and be free, you're not scared of it. Nothing can scare you. And that, oh my God, the way you write it, that's absolutely amazing. And I know that's
there will be a second and probably a third book.
Ooh.
But it's not going to be the same. So the second book is going to be like a collection of short stories that are going to merge. It's going to be, because there's just not, it's not the same. Right? Like, this is the book of what I went through, and I'm going to expand on some of the stories and actually like childhood things that, like, because there were weird things that happened in my childhood around that time too, and there was some weirdness and other things that I just didn't want to get into in the book. Basically, the second book are going to be things that are less provable. Like, this book is like, we're already talking just between me and you. We've already had a lot of validating points. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Between the mantid, we're having overlap in our, like, I never knew that you met a mantid. I don't, Elena, I love you to death, but I don't watch much of your stuff. I just don't.
You don't have time. Yes.
And even if I do, it's like, I don't study other people's stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's like, I have my own, I'm
the same.
Yeah. Right. You're doing the interviews. You can't have time to go watch them. So, but anyhow, so I didn't know that. So that's an overlapping thing. That's an overlapping validation. So this book is full of all those things that I thought would overlap well and are presenting. So the next book are going to be things that aren't that provable, that I experienced, that I remember, but that are kind of hard to get to believe. What I'm saying, like, they're going to be things that are much more difficult to grasp. And then there's going to be a back and forth. Jackie's going to help me. It's kind of a 50-50. It's going to be like her story as well. It's going to be mixed in there. But that's what I mean. There's going to be separate storylines because whatever. Oh, I don't want to give it away. We're just starting to write it. And then the third book I'm planning on doing is going to be this life, like what happened when I got my memories back. I was visited. I had an ET visit me. I believe I was taken by the Air Force and interrogated. And then how I met Dr. Sal. I'm going to put emails, you know what I mean, in it. And I'm going to tell what I've learned since then. Since I've gone public with the story, I'm going to write a book about that because I think a lot of people will be surprised at what goes on, in the community. And it's going to be a tell-all. Like, I'm going to really, you know what I mean? Like, I have to always dance around certain things to not be, you know what I'm saying, the legal issues. But it's going to be a tell-all. Like I'm gonna give out, you know what I mean, because I've been treated very well since I've gone public, and I've been treated very badly, and I'm going to call it like I see it. You know what I mean? Like that's what I'm going to do. So,
in this mission with this reptilian that you call EBE5, I think, you transport Mercury to fix an anti-gravity device. Well, it's interesting because Mercury is used into torsion field anti-gravity propulsion for UFOs, for spaceships. And it's actually red mercury that's put into the double toroids, and that spun at right angle, perpendicular angle. It creates anti-gravity. And so you didn't know at the time, of course. You were young, you were there, you know, but that's proven fact now. So that's very interesting.
They called it Quicksilver. That was the name of it. It was, they're like, it's just Mercury, but we call it Quicksilver. You know, like the program called it. And that's all and the task that they had us do, you know what I mean? You would think that we were serving. It was so easy, like anybody could have done it. There was no technical. It was like we had canisters the size of a 2 liter of pop, you know, like a pop 2 liter, but it was chrome. It was metal. It was like stainless steel. And we would plug it into this unit and just and one guy did it. We were like, why are we even here? Do you know what I'm saying? Like the mission was, we were literally just fodder for this thing that could have killed and eaten one of us. It was really, that was the dynamic of that mission. So, but that was I put important thing in the book.
Yeah.
I look at buildings differently now. Like whenever I see a high rise, I think, could there be one up there at the top? That, you know what I mean? Like there's so many, and I actually did look at corporate buildings tend to have a giant room at the very top, a much taller ceiling. They have most corporations have a bit when they have their building. If you look at the top floor, it's a tall 20, 30 foot ceiling, and it's a big open room. And so, you know, I wonder I'm always curious, like if that's really the deal, you know, if they have these kind of systems for them to come visit there or take it over or live there, do whatever. Yeah. So that's why it's important. These are things that could come up later in life for mankind to know about. It could be history. It could be a historical fact. So
yes, totally. My next question, I've been fascinated by what you describe as anti-telephoning. Could you just tell about a bit about it, please?
Right. So we picked on each other when we talked about anti-telephoning a lot. It was something that they did that is, and I say this, that there are entities, we were aware that there are entities that are outside of time space that police time travel. So in other words, the reason, you know, they can't affect the timeline in great ways because there's intelligences that'll come and fix the timeline for one and punish you greatly. And the Germans, when they first went up, you know, the Deutsch, whenever they first went to Ceres Colony and they acquired, and I got to say that's why they called it 0 hour. The fleet wasn't really dark fleet. It was 0 hour or Middernacht Waffe. So the midnight, we call them in English, we call them midnight wolves. And they were always saying 0 hour is here. When they showed up, when they walked in, when we got there, 0 hour is here. And what they meant by that was they named it 0 hour, which is midnight, because they had acquired time travel. And it's always midnight. It's always the first hour for them because they had time travel. That was where the name came from. But at that point in the beginning, they tried to aggressively do time travel and manifest things in their own favor, and they got punished. They quickly got in trouble by by some other. It's not even a race. It's not even a race. It's like a time traveling entity that lives outside of time space that is in charge of it, preserving the timeline. And we heard stories about the early ones that got punished, and some, you know, like one guy lived a miserable existence for 1,000 years, and then put back in his life, a minute later. Like they took him out of his body, and he lived 1,000 years of horrible existences, or some, you know what I mean, like some bad thing happened, and they put him back and said, "Don't do it again." Like this was the guy in charge, like their general or their, you know what I'm saying, the president that was in charge of the whole thing. They said, don't do that again, or we'll do this again. We can do it. We can keep it up all night. You know what I mean? Like quit doing it. And so they had discovered how far they could get away with it. And what they did, the loophole was that the ship would leave. You know, I always say it like this: the ship would leave at 8 a.m. and it would come back. And so the ships had different drives. There was an A to B drive and there was a jump drive. So the ship could create a portal and go to another star system instantly. So the ship could go instantly, or it could fly very quickly, A to B, just like an airplane or a car, very fast. And what they did was the ship would leave the base at 8 a.m. and portal out to another system and do the mission. And when it portaled back, it would portal back 5 minutes away, traveling of A to B in the past. So 7:55, but 5 minutes of A to B flight. So it couldn't get back before. And because the rule was you can't come back from the police, they said, you can't do that. You can't. But they had observation posts on the ship, in the base that's behind me. They had observation posts so they could see the ship appear and know that the mission went okay. And if the mission failed, they could come back somewhere different. If the mission was taken over, only the captain knew the coordinates that they would return to, the correct coordinates. And then they would see the ship go, okay, the mission worked, let them go. And so if the ship didn't come back, which was what happened sometimes, or if it was in a different position, they would not leave. They would just cancel the mission and we would clean all day. We'd do maintenance all day. And it was by that, they called it anti-telephoning. And then they debriefed us when that did happen. It happened quite a bit that they canceled our flights, and they would debrief us and ask us, they wanted to know our dreams for the next couple of weeks. They wanted to know what we were dreaming. So if you think about that, like anti-telephoning, you think about, they could schedule very aggressive missions, ship missions. You know, when they went to other races, they could do very bad things, very aggressive things, and because they know if they got away with it or not, and they wouldn't have any loss of life or material. They wouldn't have any loss because they just canceled the mission before it left. So they called it anti-telephoning. They anti-telephoned and let themselves know that the mission failed or was good. So we made jokes about it.
Uh-huh.
We always made jokes about it. Said, man, you are so bad. Like if you're sweeping the floor, you're so bad at that. They're going to anti-telephone this mission. You suck so bad at this that we have to anti-telephone this whole mission away now. Look at what you did. Look how you stack these boxes. We would always pick on each other, and that always stood out. And in the mission, the final mission on the Blitz bus, the ship I was on, that I was hurt, I thought that they were going to anti-telephone it. Like in the back of my mind, I was not being heroic at all. Like I got a lot of credit for being heroic in that scene, in that part of the book. Yeah. But at the time, I was not being heroic. I thought they're just going to scrub this mission anyway. I'll just go in there. I'll just go do it. You know, I'll just do what I'm being told because this is obviously a fail. Yeah. And it didn't, and they made it. So it led to the decommissioning of that ship and my promotion to being a cargo engineer, which wasn't so bad. Really, I got to say, overall, I finally, out of my time, I had a good job out of all of the whole year, all that time.
Yeah. I was very impressed before you wrote your book, and you speak about this in your book as well. The portal, who is behind Jupiter. There's a portal, and you describe a star. It's a stargate. And I was also shown, we had this conversation before, but I was also shown this portal behind Jupiter. And I just looked for the drawing. I was shown from a ship, from the window of a ship. It was in space. It was like a bit a bubble floating in space, and you would go through it. And you speak about this stargate that would take you to other stargates in your book.
In fact, to other galaxies. It was a portal to go to other galaxies. It gave access to like 20 galaxies or something. And then you could find another one and then go to other galaxies too. So they're I don't want to say they're common, but we were explained how that worked. That we went to actually other galaxies with that. And it was disorienting. Like you would get sick to your stomach. You could get, the first time you did it, you would vomit, and then you would get used to it after a few 5 or 6 more times. Like you came out of it a little disoriented.
Oh God, I've never been through a portal. I will not take the chance.
Hmm.
You know, when I read your book, it was after all the events with Ganymede happened. It was, and it hit me as well. I went, wait a minute. Tony describes, I knew about the existence of this portal, but it never, really hit me. It's always the same. You read stuff and boom, 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 suddenly, wow, your book is so amazing for that. Stargate behind Jupiter that can take you to other galaxies. Well, the Intergalactic Confederation in October arrived behind Jupiter and stationed between Jupiter and Ganymede. Intergalactic Confederation. Did they use this portal? I still asking the question to Thorhan. He hasn't, I don't always have the answers. I need to figure it out myself. But suddenly, yeah, that was my
It rang a bell. Well, the other thing was around Jupiter, there are pockets of temporal bubbles that are not portals. They're like empty. They're like space, an area of space that's not in space-time. Mm-hmm. So they set up. There are space stations inside those. Yeah. And we did go, and there's a lot. There's actually quite a lot around Jupiter. There's quite a bit of there's many space stations. There's many, on all the planets. There's colonies set up. So there's a lot. It's a very busy place.
Yeah. It seems to. Something as well we've been talking about, and I thought would bring it up at the occasion of this video. When I was taken once to Jupiter, and when we arrived in the vicinity of Jupiter, I was on board Thorhan's ship, and he said to me, "Now, stop thinking normally. Just think about happy stuff. Please stop any personal thoughts. Try to control it, and no, just happy." Like blank, like stupid, happy thoughts, you're in a happy place. And that's it. Just focus on that the whole time we're on Jupiter. And because he said they have systems that scan your brain constantly. And if they detect any emotion, like such as fear, anger, they're going to arrest you. And then we had this conversation about, I heard a joke about space witch, and you said, hey, wait a minute, that's a real thing. So could you tell about this, please?
Well, there were times when we were intercepted. There was a time that we were intercepted by another ship, and we were told over the intercom to not think about individual things, to think, I forget what they said, like, think about going back to the base and having freedom. Think about going back to the Ceres Colony and getting your freedom, and how good, how happy you're going to be back there. That's what they told us. Clear your head. They came over the intercom and told literally ship-wide everybody to think about that. And then later on, when we asked about it, we were scanned, we were pulled over. And then there was over the intercom, the captain had a conversation with another ship captain who, like, apparently we stole something from them. We had stole cargo or something from some other colony in the solar system, and they had the conversation. He played it that we were supposedly pulled over, and he said, "Well, you don't have any jurisdiction over us, so we're going to go." But basically, we were told that we were being scanned by psychics. That ship had psychics, and they were scanning us to see, who knew what. And they told us just to clear our mind, and then we would be on our way. And so we were told that. And then the other thing was that's why it was very compartmentalized. There was an entire area of the ship. So the rear part of the ship and the sides were where the cargo base were, where I worked. And above that, there were a few offices and things above the cargo bay, but I wasn't allowed to go there. And then on the main sea deck, on the sides, I could go in that hallway to a certain point. But I didn't have clearance for the center of the ship, in the middle, and a lot of the mid decks. I had no idea what was in there, how many people were there, what they were doing. I had zero idea of it. It was classified. and they compartmentalized us because of that reason. And I was told, later on that the bridge crew, that only the command, the front of the ship, that they had shielding against those scans. Like they had some kind of technology that stopped it. And so they didn't tell us about any weapon systems or the size of the motor, or we didn't know a lot of the technical parts of the ship because we weren't shielded from scans. So other ETs, they're like, you don't want to be out in deep space and have an ET come up and scan your ship, your crew, and realize that they can just take your ship over. You know what I mean? Because they'll take it. And so that's why they said we were compartmentalized the way we were, and that the bridge crew actually had a great deal of defense against it. So I don't know how that worked exactly, but that was the case. It wasn't very often. I think there was just that time and possibly one other time when they told us what to think, which is just saying that it doesn't sound right. You know what I mean? Literally being told what to think because we were in a circumstance where we could be scanned.
Yeah. Did you tell me that they had most of the ships had a psychic
Yes.
on the bridge?
Yes, they had crew. And what's funny is that I met a lot of the bridge crew, but I never met the psychics. Like they had their own like room that they were in. They were like I had a high productivity score, and my reward was to come up and meet the captain. The captain called me up, and I walked on the bridge as we were coming back into base. And that's a big thing in the book. It was like a reward for doing good. And the psychics were not there. You know what I mean? Like I remember asking, so where they had their own room, like on the side of the bridge crew. And there was quite a few people. So let me say this right. So when you look at like a Star Trek episode, the bridge of the ship wasn't like that per se, but it was. But you know how you imagine people sitting at their station, they have little computer stations. There were like 25 people, 20, 22, 25. There were quite a bit of people on the bridge sitting in a station like that with like VR sets. Mm-hmm. And they had a curved screen in front of them that they could touch, but it was black. We couldn't see what was on the screen, but they could. And the captain had a main viewer, just like in Star Trek. He was up on a chair, and he had the two officers behind him facing each other. And they did not have those helmets, and he could call up what any of the crew was looking at. He could put it on the main screen and see it for himself. And he had a pad a control pad that he could do that. And it was dark. It wasn't lit up in there. It was darkened. It was very very low lighting so that you could see the screens well. It was like a theater, like a little bit more light than a theater. It was how the bridge was.
Yeah, well, Thorhan's command ship it's like this when you're on the little command room, it's dark and it's like green and purple neon light, and you just see the holographic screens. So it's the same. Star Trek Next Generation, Deanna Troi, she's a psychic on the bridge, and she scans the other ships with her mind when they approach another ship. So, so Star Trek disclosure again. Impressive. Yeah,
There's always a lot. I've always loved sci-fi, right? So, you know what I mean? And I didn't know why at a young age, but after I got my memories back, then a lot of it. And I'm always surprised how, especially nowadays, like we get disclosure in all the movies. And what I found is it's not necessarily the writers that know what they're doing. I think it's the special effects. Like in the story of a lot of the shows that we get, it's the special effects. The CGI, the background is actually is something based on reality of the space program. And then it's in the story. So it's like they're telling us, but they're not without telling us.
That's it. That's the best way.
That's like law of the universe.
It's the most, I think it's the most sensitive way to get people used to these things, to enter their reality, and then when the reality just hits, you'd already conditioned to believe it's something that may happen, because you've seen it.
Yeah. I've had a lot of skeptics say, oh, so you saw this movie. So they hear my interview and they go, oh, well, you saw that movie. You're just copying this movie that's got bugs in it, or it's got this reptile in it. So you're just copying. But there's a little bit of it in in every movie. Like I'm saying, they give us one or two facets of reality in the movie, and the rest of it's not. And so it's like they're definitely up to something. Hollywood is up to something, and they have inside information. 100%. I'm sure of it.
I have an important question nearly at the end of my list. There's so many. I mean, this book is so rich. There's so much. Okay. The Orion Group. You were sent on a mission once to assist in a war. Well, not you, but your ship in a war in the Orion Nebula. The people there are at war against each other, two different species. The trapezium cluster in the nebula is to be protected, something like that. It's mentioned. Okay.
So,
please.
Go ahead.
I wanted to. No, go on. You want to say something about that?
Well, there was a war that broke out, and this would have been in our timeline in our years, sometime between, I want to say 1997 to 1998, 9, right in there, those couple years. That's when it happened. And it was a war with somebody else in another star system. And what it was they amassed the fleet there. So they had a fleet from many different systems that, like the Orion Group it's not just one region of space that they occupy. They're all over the place. They have many worlds that they have. And the thing was, the talk that I heard was that even more advanced species would fear them because they had such a great military. They had such they had numbers, and they were so good at military. Like it was their like the military arm of their system, of their group, is what they spend most of their resources on being a formidable military. And they had numbers that they even could, a small, very advanced species that was way more advanced than them technologically would still fall to the Orion Group because they had so many numbers. They'd have such a big region of space that they do. So the ships amassed from all over, from our galaxy and even other galaxies. The ships would come in from their colonies that they have, and they would meet there in the trapezium. And I guess the very beginning of it, the ships were close together, and they were getting ready to go off into war. And our ship was we were delivering cargo. We were rearming them with supplies and going there. And when we finally got it down to where, like in the beginning, you weren't allowed to leave your post. It was long days, and we had to get everything. It was very high. It was a combat exercise, and we just went there and we took orders. We flew to the trapezium. We did nothing. We got orders, and then we left. And over the next couple of weeks, I want to say week or two, I don't know if I covered that, what I said, but over the next couple of weeks, we would take cargo and just put it into the dead of space. We would go back to the trapezium, and we were told to go out, and because it's the Orion Nebula, we had time once the combat began for that fleet, then the ships would go and then come back for a long time. And in the beginning, so I didn't see it personally, but I was told that you could look out and there were thousands of ships that, all close to each other. And then during this time, after they all went out into combat, when they came back, they were actually light years apart. So you couldn't find them. They were, you know what I'm saying? Like they were hard to find. But we would take cargo and drop it into the dead space, and we would sit there and wait for our next orders to do. And so we had time to go up and look. And, so different people. So apparently we had people on the ship from other species of human, and that were not from, like, humans that were not from Earth, and Ceres Colony humans. And there were people that could look out, and it was an acuity thing. Like some people reported seeing 5 and 6 colors in the clouds of which are light years thick.
Yes, you described that. Amazing.
So, and they were like, just as a game, just go out and see what kind of colors you can see. And I remember I saw 2. I saw a little bit of red in the distance and the gray. Like when you look at a telescope and look at the gray of if anybody's ever looked through a telescope, when you see the gray of a nebula or like a cloud in space, that gray color, I saw that color and I saw red and maybe a tinge. I was stretching it, maybe a tinge of a yellow here and there, but it was basically just reddish in the distance around some stars. But it was beautiful. It was one of those things that I always had this memory like my whole life. And I didn't know how I got that memory. You know, like I was standing there and looking out a big bay window of the ship and looking into a star field. And they felt close, but they were light years away. It's a very big region of space, but there's a lot there. There's a lot of there's a open star cluster. But the command crew was very excited. That was their opportunity for promotion because it was a combat mission. We were a cargo ship that did trade missions. And then for that time, we were technically doing combat missions. And so they were all full of themselves for that, the command crew. The mission briefings, they were high fives. You know, they were very happy, and they thought they could get promoted. Like if we, you know what I mean? Like they were trying to get promoted. There's always a carrot and stick system going on with Ceres Colony.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes. And I'm going to dig a little bit in it. The trapezium, I was told by my contacts that there's a portal in it, and it's very well, it's like prized. You know, who controls this portal controls a lot, and also it's the center of the hive. The hive consciousness of the Nebu, the Orion Grays. It's in the trapezium. So does that make sense to you?
That does. I believe so. You know, I hadn't thought about it, that there was a portal there, but I knew that they were like, that was their step off point that they went to. And I don't think about it much, but I think that there was talk of it, but you know, I'm not sure. The memories of that time. There was a lot that went on while we were there. You know, like it was an active time on the ship, and it was in the first few days it was very stressful because we didn't know what to expect. But after a few days of it, when we did missions there, it really relaxed, and it turned into an easy job. Like we thought that we were going into something that was going to be dangerous. You know, we were told it's combat. We didn't know what we were doing. And they went there and found out we were just going to be ferrying cargo back and forth from, basically, we did pick up stuff from Diego Garcia and take it there. And we did pick up things from inside our solar system and from bases in our solar system and take it there. Yeah. We took a lot of cargo there, and we had a lot of downtime where we were waiting. Because as things developed, they sent for different things. So there were times when we just did nothing. We had 4 hours. We didn't know what we were doing there. And then when the situation developed, they realized they needed this X amount of this. And then we would go get it and bring it into that space. We would put cargo into the dead of space. It would be motionless. And in the void of space, you know, big piles of boxes of cargo, and we would fly away, and then another ship would come up and get it. So we were not there when the other ship arrived ever.
Wow, yeah. So that's yeah.
But
no, go
I'm sorry, but
no.
The portal thing makes perfect sense now that you mention it. I think I remember, but it's something that I never really gave a lot of thought to. You know, like that region of space. And during that time, like I was just happy that things were slow, that it turned into a slow, easy job. Like I didn't know what to expect. So I remember that it was very relaxing that we, you know, when we offloaded, we were like, okay, it was the equivalent of, you know, if you're a trucker, imagine a guy that drives a big rig truck and having one box in the truck, one little box, and taking okay, go ahead and unload. You know, it was not difficult at all. We didn't run a capacity. I didn't have to worry about really stacking a lot of things. We took small amounts of things most of the time. That's what I remember the most.
Okay, that's you know these testimonies of yours about the Orion Group are absolutely crucial and very important, because the Orion Group okay, that they are the ones who have made agreements with the MJ-12 on Earth. You know, that's a whole story where Eisenhower was fooled, more or less, yes. And you testify that the Dark Fleet worked with the Orion Group, but for them. And there's a second, so that because the Dark Fleet works for them, you have two testimonies in your book about that really echoes on what has happened on Earth. The Nazis were working also with the MJ12. That's, their connections. That's very important. And the second, and even more important testimony is your second testimony about the connection Dark Fleet Orion group, what I call Nebu, is you are sent as a team on a mission, because you are taking missions in the Pleiades on behalf. So I first wanted to read this part, but people will find out page 408 people read that bit. You are sent on behalf of the Orion group in the Pleiades on a planet to trade, to get the local species to accept to trade. I don't remember what you said, against technology.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened on Earth.
Yeah. So it was a species that was more like a humanoid, like a cross between a humanoid and a mammal. I call it the rat. He looked like a rat, but with a human face, but like a rat body, and they were short. It was a species, and they were in the equivalent of like our technology in the 70s. Maybe the 60s, you know what I'm saying? Like sometime in between the 60s and 70s or 80s even of technology. They had radar, and but they had older, clunkier looking machines that they were doing, and we were going there as like we had an offer, like we were going there to set up a trade deal with them, to trade some kind of ore. It was a metal ore, really, is what it was. It was an ore of an unrefined metal that was good, like very special metal. And we were going there to act like we were trading. We would give them some technology to set up trade. And the guy that we were dealing with was trying to get rich. Like he was in a money system, and he was he was representing a small part of a branch of a government. Like they didn't even know about us, and that world was unaware, just like we are unaware of ET life. So it was like they were still in the dark about it. And on the way back, I thought I was still doing my job. And when we were riding, we took an LCAC, a hovercraft, to fly in, and so that we didn't have to bring the ship in and be seen. We took an LCAC and rode that in to the meeting. On the way back, I was talking to officers, and I was doing the math on it. Like, we can totally do this. I'm guessing it'll take us something like 2 weeks to move 600 of those crates. Or not 2 weeks, but like two weeks worth of missions, however we set it up. And I said, we can totally do this. This is great. We can do this. And I was kind of pumped. And he said, we're not going to do this. He's like, this is all fake. He's like, don't even worry about it. We're not going to do this mission. These people are going to get taken over. Like we're just the first step in a process. Like he explained that to me. He's like, we have no intention of trade. We're not going to give them anything. We're not coming back. Another ship's going to come here and carry on. But this is part of a playbook. He's like, this is just part of a playbook. We just did our part. And he's like, don't even worry about it. You can put that thing away. They gave me my own little pad for that time, for that mission. I had my own little computer pad. He said, don't even worry about that. Just shut that off. He's like, you don't need that. We're going back to this. We're going to get back to normal. That was kind of how that worked. So it wasn't until I spoke privately with Jason Rice, because I didn't really watch all his episodes on Gaia. Jason Rice, who spoke, and then he's since quit speaking on his time. But when I spoke privately with him, he said that's exactly with his group, that his organization, he said that's exactly what they do. And I was telling him about that. He said, no, that's exactly what they do. They go in and act like they're going to set up trade. Yep. And then another species comes in, and there's an antagonist, and they look like the rescue. And,
yes.
And that's pretty much what happened to us, isn't it? So
yes,
they came in and looked like, because that group has many different species in it, and one can be in it. I really, and I hate's too big of a word, but it really bothers me when people in the community have the same 5 star systems that they ever talk about. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because there's so much more out there that we don't know. We don't know the names of all the star systems that are part of the government that is controlling us. We don't even know. And so people are always like, in my past life, I was this. It's always the same. It's like Pleiadian, Arcturian, whatever.
Oh my God, yes.
It's just a lack of knowledge because we're being interacted with, and anybody can come here and say they're a Pleiadian. And what are you going to know about it? So the reality is that, star systems that we don't even know the names of that are very far away are here interacting and part of the group too. So, and I don't know, there's no real ID. There's no show me your ID in an abduction account. So,
Tony, I'm so happy that you are bringing that up. I am battling with that to get people to have common sense, telling them, hey, the name of the stars we see in the sky, it's Earth-made names taken from Greek, Latin, and Arabic mythology. The ETs, all these people who live there, most of them don't have any clue that Earth exists, and they have their own name for their own planet. So now stop. When someone comes to you and say, I'm an Arcturian. Oh yeah, okay. How do you name your star? What planet? How many planets in your star systems? What race? What species? How do you call? And what do you want? No, people.
right.
Common sense, people.
Yeah, you're getting his testimonies based on limited knowledge that are not from there. The other thing is when we referred to all the systems we went to by number, they had a number.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
It was a numbered system. So that's why I don't remember any of them. I don't remember, and the joke was, it's the Pleiades. Where are we at? Oh, it's the Pleiades. They said it all for years. Every time you asked what it was. And we had numbers. Like I had a mission report and I had a time frame to, we took on cargo. I had to have it sorted in 30 minutes before we took the next cargo on. And they were numbers. The place, even inside the solar system, they had a shorter number. The star systems had a longer number with a few letters in it, but it was in the solar system. We didn't say we were going to Earth. We said we were going to 481. You know what I mean? Like it was like that in the reports. So that way, all the cargo was tied to a number, like a barcode.
Yeah, barcode. Yes, I've been told the same thing. Some systems have local people give a name to their sun or their planet, but they have all barcode number, and you can tell the number. You remember in the series Stargate SG-1, they call all the planets by codes. That's exactly how it is.
And there's a real narrative that space travel is not far away, that once you get into space, you got to fly to the next star system that's only 10 light years away or 17 light years away. And that's it. That's the reality. When the truth is, and then I've been in talks with, there's a lot of people. So I can't wait till you get out in some conferences. You know what I mean? Like I can't wait to see you do a conference. I really hope you do. So I'm like pushing you towards that. If you get the chance, please do it.
Yes, I can't wait. Yeah.
But at conferences, I've also seen there are disinfo people that show up, get up on stage and talk, and they have the same kind of information. It's always that there's only a few hundred races that we deal with. There's only a few hundred, and there's only 9, and we're in charge. We're in charge of everything. Like, so that's a real controlled narrative, because that's not the reality at all. There are actually millions of races that can interact with us and come through. That's why Jupiter is such a busy place with that portal. Millions of different species come through. They come and go all the time. It's a stepping stone, and there's a chance to sell. It's like a busy off ramp of the highway. You know what I'm saying? Like in a town, there's not anybody from the town or the next town over. It's people from all over America. Yeah. You all over your country come in from an off ramp, and that's what it is. And we are accessible to them, and they are accessible to our programs. Billions of worlds, trillions of worlds. Yeah. So that's reality. So you can't just say, how do you know you didn't incarnate from another galaxy in your last life? Because that's the reality, that it's possible. You didn't just come here from being the Pleiades. And it's also funny when someone says, I contacted him, he's a Pleiadian. And I'm thinking, well, which one of the 200,000 worlds in the Pleiades is he from?
Say which one?
which world is it? Because there's like 200,000 of them.
Describe the culture. Describe the you know. And it doesn't surprise me that the Ashtar Galactic Command, well, the real one, not the psyop cult, glittery,
the glitter.
The glittery, anyway, the real Ashtar Command with our military mercenary structure. It's not by chance that they set up their station in the upper atmosphere of Jupiter to just, it's like in Deep Space Nine, you're going to put the military observation outpost near the portal to just who goes through, just to it's not by chance. And also on Ganymede, you have all these bases of all these different cultures, and very
heavily regulated area of space. So we had permission. You have to have somebody sponsor you. You have to have one of these bigger groups sponsor you, and you have to get permission. Like, we couldn't just willy-nilly go through there, and we weren't aware of it. We were on a very strict time schedule when we were in Jupiter space in that area, and they could not deviate. And especially, I guess the portal, the temporal bubbles, when they went inside of them, it was there was a computer solution for the angle and the speed and everything that you went in. Like, they couldn't just fly in there, like, and they said that our ship didn't have the computing power to come up with the coordinates, that they actually had to use a space station computer to get the route to go in and get inside the bubble at the time that they wanted to be there, that it was very complicated. So that it's not a willy-nilly deal, and it makes perfect sense. The Federation's there. There are probably a few other groups there along with the Federation, that they're all doing business, and they have to regulate these to ensure their own survival, because that's like a doorway. So you can't just have somebody showing up in your backyard with a fleet. So it makes sense to have the portals under control as well. Yes.
I think that the Ashtar Galaxy Command does the job there to regulate everyone, and just like, they're very when you approach the zone, you could remember yourself. I guess you just enter total brain scanned and security zone. It's quite impressive. My last, because of lot of things, I have a last mention, or things I want to say. Recently, a few days ago, as we are recording this, Dr. Michael Sala interviewed his contact in the U.S. Army, JP, went into an ark buried under the Atlantic Ocean. And JP describes the same bubble portal as you went through when you were, I suppose it was on the moon. He described this bubble like portal, wavy liquid light in the middle of the room, and soldiers coming from it. I want to mention that was just correlating what you were mentioning in your book.
The portal. So the one that I used on that mission to Chicago really was the time that it was impressive. And I found out that while we were writing the book, Jackie pointed something out to me that, God, I forget, moldavite. It's not moldavite. It's one of the stones, shields from radiation. Shields is a natural barrier from radiation. I describe it in the book that there were two stones. I forget. I'll ask her about that. But there were two stones. They were giant stones that were very thick, where the portal was created in the room.
It's black like this?
It was a black stone,
That's shungite, and it shields from radiation. Like maybe that.
Well, the room that it was in, because they said that the portal technicians, there were guys that were United States guys that were running. They were running the computer that opened up the portal, and the wall turned clear so they could see it when it happened. And you couldn't see it, and you couldn't see the portal until you got up close to it. You could see a bright light, like a flash of light, like a ball of light. But when you got close to it, it actually changed, and you could see through it and see the room on the other side when you got close. But they explain that it took a great deal of power, and that's why not everybody has one. That the moon has one of the better powers, free energy systems, like free. And I say this all the time. Everybody wants free energy, and I'm thinking, well, how much do you want? Do you want free energy to just power your house or your city, or do you want free energy that can open up a portal to another galaxy? Because it takes power. It's power output. And the moon has one of the greatest outputs that we had access to, like even more so than Ceres Colony. Like Ceres Colony had portals, the ships had portals, but not on the level that the moon did. The moon had a greater power source that could make a portal that could go much farther and which is more useful. So there's that. So power output was a big deal. And I think about when I hear about these other insiders, everybody's saying that like the portal in Antarctica, that means that there's quite a bit in Antarctica. So anywhere that there's a portal system set up, there's also a very great power system set up as well. There's a very big power generation. Portals are not something that was everybody could do.
Makes sense.
In the colonies. The entire colony, 250,000 people, did not have the power output that one portal system does. So that's, you know what I mean? Like, I'll listen to that. I just looked when you said that. I'll have a look because I love JP's info. He tells it in a different way. And he's a good down to earth guy. He's a soldier. You can tell he's a soldier. And I love listening to his stuff. And again, it's like, I still hear things that I remember that I don't really talk out about, you know? And so when you get over that overlap, I still sometimes I'm dumbfounded and I go, God, it all happened.
Yeah.
God, it's real. You know, because I get caught up into my life. I got to get the car get an oil change and go get groceries. And so I get caught up in that. And then all of a sudden I'll see something else. I go, man, that's true too. You know, like, hey, man, all that happened. Like I snap out of my regular life and back into, you know what I mean? Like remembering it all. So.
Yes, that's it. It's a moment where everyone start to speak. We have all started to talk, and we're all coming together, confirming each other's stories from different point of views. You know, I have a different perspective. I'm a contactee. You have been taken into the Dark Fleet secret programs, and JP is another perspective as well. Is from the U.S. Army side, working with for the Earth Alliance, I think, or the White Hats are above that. You know, so different perspectives, and yet all the details match, and that is disclosure. That's us, the people who do that, and we're coming more and more together, and that's quite fantastic.
Overlap. All the overlap is amazing. So there's definitely not just one source for this information. It's coming from all over the place, and the overlap is what tells you. You know what I mean? When you get natural overlap, that's what tells you it's genuine. So leave it at that.
Yeah. So Tony, I recommend everyone to get this book, Ceres Colony Cavalier. So Tony, where? Yes.
So I want to have a look. So it's on my. Man, I'm literally, while we're doing this interview, I just looked, I'm uploading the Kindle version. So it'll be available on Kindle very soon. Hopefully, sometimes Amazon kicks it back at you, but the Kindle version is finished and it'll be uploaded here, hopefully today. And you can link to this off my website, TonyRodrigues.com. Or if you go to Amazon.com, you have to click the books link. You can't just put it in the prompt because it's brand new. It hasn't been out long. And so if you go to the books link and put Ceres Colony Cavalier, it should come up in the top one or two of those. It was a bestseller. It made 4 weeks of bestseller in its category. It's fallen off of that now. So the first month was really great, but it's a good book. And I've got a lot of great reviews about it. And I tell it all. And you know what? It's like reading my diary. It's embarrassing. There's a lot of it that's embarrassing because it's like giving the whole world my diary of what I lived through for a long time.
Yeah, they're very private.
And so there's some it's very personal to me, but I feel it's important, and I feel it's going to be important as we go forward, and we do get disclosure, and we start to see what the real history of mankind really is. I think that the information that I shared, that what I went through, is going to be, someone's going to find it very worthwhile. And like I said, a lot of people, it's not all doom and gloom. The book isn't all doom and gloom. I like to think that, there's some good things in there too, on top of the darker parts. Also, like I said, it's a big victory to me because they told me I wasn't going to remember. And there's the proof. So the book to me personally, after all I went through to an advanced ET race, to the secret space program, to advance all these higher beings that think I'm just a cow. If I'm just a cattle to them, I beat them because I remembered it all. When they thought I wasn't going to, when they assured me I wasn't going to, I had a victory over them. So the cow beat the farmer in this case. And so I'm very proud of that. I'm very, very proud of that.
Yes. And to me, a lesson that comes always from this is that love is a formidable force that overcomes any technology if we really give it the impulse and the power. It was because it was a motivation in you remembering. So that's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Thanks.
Tony, before we finish this amazing conversation, is there last thing you want to tell the audience and your advice for humanity to go through these times, please?
You know what I mean? Like that's a big question. So I would say that, keep your eye. I really think the conferences are going to be the biggest step in the future for us right now. Like we're in a kind of ufology and disclosure in general is at a plateau right now. We're at a plateau. Like we were having a lot of info, and then a lot of disinfo is really coming out now. There really is disinfo. Which means we're important. If they go through the trouble to create disinfo, that means we're very important. And so there's some of that. So look for the overlap. I would say look for the common denominators and not just take every story verbatim, because there's a lot of people coming forward and that things they're saying don't really jive, but there are common denominators that do. So that's what I would tell everybody in all of this. And we're going to get a disclosure, and just try, don't buy into the negativity, of anything that's happening, because the whole world's, with the pandemic and everything, the whole world's really in uncharted territory right now. We really are. And so don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid, and don't buy into the negativity. There's a lot, you can go one way or the other. And we're on the verge of some birth pains of a very beautiful world that's coming to us. So that's what I think. And then, my story is got some dark tales of it. And, I think everybody's life is checkered with wonderful days and, sunny days and rainy days, and it's not going to rain every day. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tony. That was very profound. And those who read your book, such as myself, know how it resonates even deeper regarding to everything you've been through. And coming from you, this is a very powerful thing to hear. Thank you so much.
Thanks. It was great seeing you again, Elena. I just love you to death. Keep going like you're doing. You're doing such a great job. So thank you so much for everything you do too. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you.